You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guest this week, Sam James. Now, this week we're talking about including disability in activity and fitness. And Sam is actually a fitness instructor who specialises in working with people with disabilities. But she also is kind of unique because, Sam, if you want to tell us a little bit about you and what makes you different to a lot of what we think of as fitness people.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sam, and I am obviously a personal trainer, fitness instructor, but I have a disability myself. So I have the most common physical disability out there, which is cerebral palsy. So cerebral palsy is a group of conditions that affects it's technically a neurological condition, but it affects the actual nervous system and the movement of the actual body itself. So the body doesn't actually do what you tell it to do, basically, in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, yeah. And as you say, it's a very common disability, and there are various effects.
Yeah.
But like anything else, it's just as important, maybe more so, that people are active, that people exercise, because it helps to attenuate and improve some of the effects.
Yeah.
So what got you started with activity or exercise generally?
So generally, so I go back to my 20s. I was starting to feel like I was becoming, my body was like not doing what I wanted it to do, basically. And with cerebral palsy, though it's a non-progressive condition, once you hit adulthood, the aging effects can actually increase, can make it appear to be a progressive condition when it's not. And I was starting to go really stiff and tight. I went to my GP and she just suggested that I do something like yoga or Pilates. So I joined my local country gym, did body balance for a while. Then Zumba came out, and I always wanted to dance as a kid, but no dance school would have me because of my disability. So I found a class, went, loved it. The more I went, I then started to get brave and went to other classes at my gym. Then I cracked a bone in my shoulder joint, and through the rehab, I'm seeing not only my shoulder joint improving, but my actual disability improving. I thought I could actually do this myself, and the PT that I was working with actually said to me, "Sam, you'll be a really good role model for looking at disabled people and getting them active. You should really think about this." So I asked him what qualifications I needed to work with disabled adults. I went home, I Googled it, and the first thing that came up was instructability. And it is a funded programme by Sport England run through Aspire charity to get disabled people qualified and working within the fitness industry because they saw that there's a gap in the market. I applied, got on the course, and back in August 2013, I qualified as a level 2 gym instructor. I then went on to do my level 3 exercise and disability qualification. And with instructability, you had to do a 3-month work placement, which I did in my local council gym. From that, I got taken on and I started to work in the exercise referral team, because that's where they had a gap at the time. I then went on to do my level 3 PT, level 3 exercise referral qualifications. I got my level 4 exercise for long-term neurological conditions qualification. And I basically also work with other fitness brands to try and make them more inclusive to disabled adults, because I feel that a disabled adult should not go to specialist class, especially if they have a physical disability and not a learning disability, because if they go to a class that is aimed for those with a lower sort of cognitive ability, they're going to feel left out because they've got a higher level and they can follow a mainstream class. So for me, those are people with physical disabilities that are technically being left out of mainstream fitness when they should be included. And that is why I qualified, basically, in a nutshell.
Brilliant. And it's so needed. It's absolutely so needed. Because, like you say, you're a role model, and people will look at you and think, oh, well, if she can do it, then she can help me to do it. And it's, we need more differences in the industry. It's I used to assess people at the Royal College for the Blind, and you think, how can they possibly be trainers? But actually, they were really, really good. Their verbal instructions were brilliant, and it's finding the right way. But for a lot of people, they're nervous about approaching gyms. They're nervous about approaching PTs. And, we were talking just before we came on, we were saying there's approximately 10 million people in the UK who have some sort of disability, possibly more. I mean, there are probably a lot of people out there who are kind of, if you like, disabled almost by health conditions rather than having a physical disability. That's an awful lot of people. And that's an awful lot of people who probably want to exercise, want to be active, maybe want to be athletes.
Yeah.
And, and yet from speaking to a lot of people, they're saying, I go to the gym and they say, oh, we're really sorry, we don't have anyone that can help. We don't have anyone that can work with you. And they're being turned away because there's a lack of instructors out there.
There is.
Both like yourself, but also, people who don't have a disability, but who just want to make a difference. So what, as a disabled person, what do people want to see when they go to a gym? What do they want to hear?
So I know from like the groups that I'm in, like having those CP groups, and a lot of them actually they always say that the leisure centres themselves are about 20 years behind in terms of accessibility. They haven't got pool hoists. They haven't got accessible changing rooms that are open all the time. They often told, oh, we've got an accessible changing room by the pool, but you've got to go and get a staff member to get the key for you. And that can put them off. And the fact is that, in a gym, there isn't like a gym that's got a staff member qualified to work for them. Or it could be the fact that I know a lot of my PT clients have worked with not PTs that aren't qualified for disability, and they've been put off because that PT treats them like a non-disabled client. They don't understand the actual disability. They don't understand that one week they could have a really good week, the next week could be a really good week, and the week after it could be a really bad week and they can't do what they did the 2 weeks before. Then they're being told off because that PT thinks, pick on this, why can't you do that? You did it for the last 2 weeks. They don't understand that, yes, it's a disability, yet what we have to go through on a daily basis, it can change. Our disability can change every single day, and what we're able to do can change on every single day. And it means that actually when I program my clients, I can come onto a call or turn up to them, and I have to change it on the spot to suit their requirements for that day. And most PTs that work with non-disabled clients, that is what they cannot get. And that is why disabled people are put off by PTs, because they've had a bad experience by it. And I've got one of my clients, I've been working with her for less than 2 months, and literally it's only now, but I'm helping her get rid of that bad experience of her last PT that she had just after COVID, and she's not used one for over 18 months, yet that experience is still with her, and it still torments her, and that should not happen at all. It should be the complete opposite. Yet a lot of these non-disabled PTs don't understand that they're putting a lot of disabled people off exercise. And that's why more and more disabled people are now qualifying as PTs, because there's a gap in the market, so to speak.
Absolutely. And it's, it's so important, like you say, it's that sort of negative experience can can impact on future participation. But it could even be a negative reaction from a receptionist who sort of says, oh, I don't know if we've got anything suitable for you, and things like that. You know, it's you don't walk into a restaurant and someone says, oh, I don't know if we've got any food suitable for you. You look through the menu. You make your own decisions about what you're going to eat. It's the same with fitness facilities. You know, let people come in, have a look round and say, right, actually, there's quite a lot here that would be useful for me. So it's, you know, it's giving people the choice, giving people the options,
isn't it? And it also is that, like, I work for a leisure centre close to me, and they are very good. They have loads of inclusive sessions. So virtually 3 or 4 days a week, there is 1 or 2 inclusive sessions on every day. And it could be a gym session, it could be a seated exercise class, it could be a swimming session, they got a trampoline park, an inclusive bounce session, or inclusive ice skate. And that's where a lot of leisure centres are missing out, because if they put on an inclusive session that can be targeted to any disabled adult or even child, depending on the age range, then they're going to have a huge market walking into that leisure centre. It's an untapped market. It's the purple pound, which a lot of people don't understand. There's money there in the disabled world that disabled people want to spend, yet a lot of providers don't want them to spend it in their facility.
And that's it. You know, it's also, you know, people with a disability are just as likely to want to exercise for their health, and in actual fact, possibly more so, because we know that there are, you know, associated comorbidities and conditions that go with some of them, but particularly with inactivity. So, you know, we need more instructors who are willing to sort of stand up, get qualified, and say, right, okay, let's do this together. What can you do? What are you limited in? It's working with the client, isn't it? It's not being afraid of the condition. It's not thinking, oh crikey, I might hurt someone. But it's saying, okay, right, let's go through this logically. You know, let's look at ability, disability, the holistic package, and work out what's good.
I find that a lot of instructors can go up to an older adult, ask them all the questions under the sun, and can work with them. Yet it's exactly the same questions they need to ask a disabled client. You treat a disabled client like a normal human being. It's not their fault they were born slightly differently. It's not their fault their body slightly works in a different way. I wasn't asked to have this disability, yet the way most of the fitness industry works is it's our fault. It's our fault why we are born this way, yet actually exercise for virtually all neuroconditions is essential. You need it to improve a condition. If you don't exercise as a neurocondition, it's only going to get worse. And and actually neuroconditions is the most highly diagnosed conditions to this day, and more people every week or every day are being diagnosed with neuroconditions, you know, it's like cerebral palsy, strokes, Parkinson's, MND, MS. The list goes on, and they are the ones that are technically can be classed as disabled, but more likely to be classed as a health condition, and they're the ones that really need to use the facilities and have more likely to have a PT or a fitness instructor to understand what they want, basically, because it's not just about going to the gym. They might want to go to a class and feel included in a class. They might be sat down in a class, but let them sit down in the class, because they'll be doing it the same way, but just seated.
Yeah. And this is so important, but it's also so important to sort of, you know, really, I mean, anyone who knows me will know this is one of my catchphrases, but get to know your client, because I used to work in a very large referral scheme, and we'd get not just referral conditions, but quite a lot of people with disabilities coming in. And, you know, I'd always sort of say, right, okay, you know, they might go into muscular spasms or something, and they'd say, right, when that happens, I've just got to ride it out, you know. And if I'm sitting there doing nothing, it's not because I'm doing nothing; it's because I know what I need to do. But it's having that, isn't it? It's having that understanding that sometimes when somebody stops, it's not because they're being lazy or they're bored or anything. It's because actually their body's gone, need a bit of a break, need to stop for a moment,
brain,
need to get over this spasm.
it's like the brain overloads, and when the brain overloads, I know when my brain overloads, I need to stop. That's when I need to stop the exercise and just take a minute. Also, don't be afraid if they have balance issues and they fall over. I know that I've fallen over in front of people, they go, "Oh, you okay?" Yes, it's fine, it's a normal day occurrence. And they try and pick you up in a way that is so uncomfortable or dangerous, and they don't ask how you want to be picked up. And I'm always correcting people on, oh, you've got to do it this way. If people could say, how would you like to be picked up? When would you like to be picked up? Or can you get up yourself? Because if I'm by something, like a wall or a chair, I can get up myself. It's when I fall in the middle of nowhere that I will need help. I got nothing around me. But ask that person, because every disabled person is different. I've got clients that hate being picked up, and they've got walkers, so they can use the walker to actually their aid to help get them up. That's how the physio has trained them. And as you say, it is about getting to know your client. It's about asking them questions. Like, I think most people are scared to ask about a disability. They're scared to ask about the ins and outs of it. But actually, that's what disabled people want. They want you to ask those questions. They want you to get to know that condition. If you're working with a client with arthritis, you'll be asking every question under the sun. Yet, if you get a client with cerebral palsy, you're not asking them. It's like I'm an alien, and I'm in a different planet.
Isn't it weird though? You're right, and it's, disability. But I've noticed the same with mental health. Is people diagnosed, say they've got a mental health condition or a disability, and instead of saying, "Oh right, okay, how does that impact you? What's a good time of day to exercise? What impact does it have on everyday function?" People are like, "Oh, okay," and it's. If somebody said, "Oh, I've got arthritis" or "I've got diabetes," you'd be asking all the questions. And actually, I think it makes us as fitness instructors makes us look a bit stupid, really, because you're probably sitting there thinking, why aren't they asking me these obvious questions? Are they aren't they very good because they're not asking the questions that I would expect them to ask? So, it's obviously not being offensive or disrespectful, but it's asking the question. And I think just one thing I want to say there is there are some times where you might say the wrong thing, and that's okay as long as it's unintentional, and it's an opportunity to be educated as well. You sort of say, actually, prefer not that term, because some people, I'm thinking, some people prefer hearing impaired, other people like deaf, but it's allowing yourself as an instructor to be educated, isn't it? And say, oh right, okay, you prefer that term, that's what I'll use.
And it's only actually the deaf community prefer the word deaf, whereas the proper terminology is hearing impaired. And it's similar with the blind community, because they prefer visually impaired and not blind. So it all depends on the actual community themselves. And it's like, I know, like most people like with CP, we prefer CP because actually we don't like the name cerebral palsy because it actually sounds worse than it actually is. It describes the actual condition. It makes it sound 100 times worse than how I present, if that makes sense. So, and I prefer CP because it sort of softens the name and it sort of makes it a little bit more, not fashionable, but a little bit more bearable on those that don't know who it is, what it is, basically.
And like you say, it's one of the most common disabilities out there. But yet it's one, I mean, there are various grades and things like that, but it's one that hugely benefits, like most of them, from appropriate activity. But it's also, this is again where, as instructors, we work with the individual. We don't sort of say, oh, right, someone's coming in with CP, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. It's okay. Tell me about your condition. Tell me about how it impacts. Tell me about what you find easy to do. Tell me about what you struggle. It's all those questions, isn't it? But it's the same as you would with anyone else. But somehow we make an assumption about a condition.
I always ask what they want to get out of working with me, because if I ask that question, then I know exactly what they pinpoint, exactly what they want, and then I can actually do a plan around it. And it's also being just asking them what can't they do. Because actually, if you work out what they cannot do, then you know what to work on to help them do that. Because you say, yes, you were cerebral palsy, yes, the brain damage will never be corrected, but the neuro pathways can be rewritten, and that client then can start doing things they've never done before. I've got a client who's always had drinks out of a straw and never been able to drink normally, and now through complete accident without us knowing it, she can now drink out of a cup and not a straw. And when she goes out, she can drink a cocktail out of a cocktail glass.
Yeah.
And that's, for her, that is the biggest thing going. It might seem insignificant to a non-disabled person, but to a disabled person, that is a massive win. And it's those massive wins that are quite small to everyone else that are the most beneficial and proud. When I see her drinking out of a glass, I get so proud because I'm like, I've helped achieve that. I've done that. And that's through my knowledge, and I didn't even set out to achieve that. So it goes to show how exercise can impact someone, even in ways you don't even think of.
That's it. And it's just one thing you were talking about, sort of like with brain damage. And I know CP, we always, on the course that I teach, we refer to it as a non-progressive but not unchanging condition. But the brain damage, whenever you hear the words brain damage, you think intellectual brain damage, if you like. But actually, it's not always the case. It's brain damage resulting in physical disabilities, and an awful lot of the time, absolutely nothing wrong with the brain. It's the physical abilities that are affected rather than the mental capacity.
If someone with cerebral palsy has a learning disability, it's a separate disability on top. It's a comorbidity. It's not the cerebral palsy. It's a separate condition on top of the cerebral palsy. And again, with cerebral palsy, you might get a lot of people with cerebral palsy could be deaf, or they could have epilepsy. So it is quite common to have two conditions with cerebral palsy. It's not the cerebral palsy that's caused it. It's just a bit of bad luck that they've got two conditions.
Yeah, and this is where it's so important not to assume. Don't assume when you hear something like CP that there's some sort of intellectual impairment, because quite often there isn't.
I've not got an intellectual. I'm all okay up here, and I can be quite quick, especially when I'm working with clients. I think how quick and sharp I am, and that just goes to show that it is all physical with me. It's just my nervous system doesn't send signals how it should do. That's the only thing with me, and the fact is, like, how part of my brain damage affected my speech and language cortex, and actually I have a slight speech impediment. That's just how the damage, what part of the brain is damaged when that damage occurred.
Yeah, and this is again where it's so important to get to know your client, because chances are they may well out intellect you as the instructor.
They definitely can. I can assure you of that.
Yeah. Now, something we touched on a little bit earlier, we were looking at barriers, and I know something I've experienced with people talking to me recently when I've been really trying to promote the fact that I'm running a disability and exercise course, is that people say they've gone to the big gyms, the corporate gyms, the big chains, and just been met with a blank wall of we haven't got any way of helping you. What do you think are some of the issues? Because I know from experience, some of the much smaller private local gyms tend to be a bit better. They're kind of a bit more, you know what, come in, let's give it a go, let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
But it seems to be the bigger ones that aren't as helpful. So is that something in your experience?
I have. As an instructor, I tried to cover actually at the big corporate ones, and as soon as they found out I was disabled, they didn't want me covering the class, or they didn't want me teaching there. And I think it's the fact that they have this. I think society has a viewpoint of disability, and I think they have this negative viewpoint of disability. And I think that obviously when you look at the word disability, it's disability. It's not looking at the ability of that person.
Yeah.
They should be looking at the ability of that person. Like for the last 9 years, I've worked for 2 local councils. One I teach classes for, and I teach 5 classes there, and they all sold out. They're all sold out 10 days in advance. That goes to
Brilliant.
show a disabled person can teach a mainstream fitness class to non-disabled people and be successful. And I've actually project managed in my other job a disability sports project. So it goes to show that someone with a disability can go somewhere in the industry and work hard. And I know, like with instructability, they've had the employability scheme where they've been educating gyms on how to employ disabled people. But again, it's not just about employing disabled people. It's about making sure that centre is accessible not only for disabled staff but for disabled clients. Because if you can't get a disabled staff member working in a facility, how can you attract disabled clients? Or if you haven't
Yeah.
got a gym instructor or PT that's qualified to work with disabled clients, then again, you're not going to attract them. And actually, the first point of call for any disabled person will be the actual leisure centre. They're going to look at disabled parking. They'll look at how can they get from the car into the centre. Has it got a lift? Has it all on one floor? Has it got a swimming pool? Has it got a pool pod or a pool hoist? Has it got changing rooms that they can access any time of the day and go when it's open without having to get a key from someone? And can they do a mainstream fitness class? Can they go in a wheelchair into a mainstream fitness class? Is that instructor prepared for them? Because if not, that instructor or that leisure centre is not inclusive. They technically are discriminating against a section of that community and making them like, oh, I think that is the biggest barrier for disabled people, is they can't access what they want or where they want to access, because not all disabled people can drive. So they are limited to public transport or
Yeah.
walking or relying on people getting lifts and everything. So, and these things, unless you centre has a disabled person working for them, they're not going to look at all these aspects, because until someone is faced with a disabled person or a disability themselves, they will never ever think of it in a million years.
I remember years ago when I was involved in a huge project to get more people qualified, and it's disappointing to see that that 20 years later it's not quite as widespread as it was then. But I know that a big thing was trying to get people to go around centres and say your signage is in the wrong place, the handrails are in the wrong place. And quite often, a lot of the accessibility will be focused on wheelchair users, and not some people walk with aids or whatever, so they don't necessarily want the lower levels of things. They want handrails next to the appropriate height ones.
Yeah.
So it's really thinking about, actually it's asking, isn't it? It's getting people in to say, right, what can we do to improve it? Because all the shiny equipment in the world and the wonderful uniforms mean nothing if people come through the door and say, do you know what, there's nothing here for me. There's nothing that I feel part of, that I feel welcome for. And
I think you're right, because I think when society's view of disabled is wheelchair users. Like I don't use it. I don't got a wheelchair. I don't use one. I walk a bit wonky, but yes, if I'm in a toilet, I want handrails at the right height. I want a hand dryer at normal height. I don't want to bend down to use a sink. I want it at normal height. Yet people always think that everyone's in a wheelchair, and that isn't correct. Yet on the flip side of in a gym, even gym equipment, yes, it's becoming better, as in it's becoming a little bit more wheelchair accessible. But it's like, for example, they don't make the handbikes so power chairs can get on them. They don't factor in the battery on the bottom of a power chair, so a power chair can't get over the base. And that can be an issue for power chair users, that's the only cardio bit of equipment they can use, yet the actual manufacturer of that equipment hasn't thought about a power chair. They've thought about a manual wheelchair, but they've not thought about an electric wheelchair and how electric wheelchairs are actually made. The battery is underneath, it cannot come off, yet the bases can be quite thick on the bottom. So that means that client is now excluded because they can only use weights. They can't use a cardio bit of equipment.
There's so much to think about. I'm just literally back from the SSM conference, annual conference this year, and there were a few sessions on disability, but nothing like I would have expected to see. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to go, was to see what the advances are within, the exercises medicine arm and also the sports medicine arm of the organisation. And actually, yes, there were a few poster presentations, but there weren't a lot of mainstream sessions on disability, and I was quite disappointed about that. I'm actually thinking of putting myself forward as a speaker next year on something like this, because I know that the ACSM do have a course on, they call it inclusivity, but we just need to get more people, more instructors to do the disability, but also to get more disabled people coming along and saying, do you know what, I want to be a fitness instructor. And let's remove the barriers from them, because a lot of places will go, oh, but how will you use the gym? I can still talk, I can still tell people what to do. So we need to be much more inclusive on the entry level courses, the level 2s, gym and group exercise, because just as capable of doing that as anyone else, because that means that then there's a clear pathway towards the level 3.
To me, I actually think that anyone doing a level 2 course should be doing the level 3 exercise disability course, because to me, that virtually, I think nowadays there is more people in this world that are disabled than non-disabled, and with all these people being diagnosed every day with a neuro condition or even with arthritis, which arthritis can be quite disabling, that actually and more people, I think it should be made compulsory that actually these courses should be done, because actually non-disabled people or able-bodied people are now becoming the minority.
Yeah. People with no health condition, disability, or anything like that are actually, they are few and far between. And sadly, like you've just said, a lot of people don't just have one disability or health condition; they'll have 2 or 3. They'll be multi-morbid rather than just the single one. And I agree with you. I almost think what we call the specialist populations, but really they're not that special anymore, they're more common. But I think it's so important, because like you say, arthritis can be incredibly disabling, and because it's a relapse remitting type of condition, people have flare-ups and then periods of normality. Again, instructors need to be able to say, oh right, flare up, we'll do this instead. Or you're going through a bad phase, we'll do this instead. So there needs to be a much more awareness, doesn't there?
And people with a physical disability are more likely to get arthritis or osteoporosis and all those aging conditions, because of the impact the skeleton has on their body with how they move, basically. Like, I was diagnosed with arthritis at 25.
Wow.
So, and that's part of CP. That is a natural part of CP, because my skeleton moves in a completely different way. I'm putting more pressure through my skeleton with how I walk. I'm quite heavy-footed when I walk. So, and I've broken both my feet. So it just goes to show that actually not, that any of these conditions, you might get a PT that will work with with arthritis, but they won't work with say with a physical disability, yet they don't realise that is a physical disability in the way, because arthritis can be more disabling than what CP can.
Exactly. And again, maybe we need to look at conditions that have a disabling effect on everyday life rather than looking at disability, because like you say, arthritis, but also obesity can have a major disabling effect on everyday life. And actually, again, if people are not active, if they spend a lot of their time sat down or stationary, they're more likely to develop obesity, which then makes them more likely to develop arthritis. If they've got arthritis, they're less likely to move, which means they're more likely to develop obesity. Add in a disability, and you've just got.
If they have got obesity, they can also get a high risk of diabetes. So it's your knock-on effect of everything. Yeah, I find there's more people that will happily work with those with obesity or diabetes or arthritis than those with a more lifelong disabling condition that are probably more likely to want to improve themselves than someone that is actually like this a long-term health condition. I know during COVID, when I didn't have to self-isolate, but I was working from home, and my mobility got 100 times worse. I was stiffening up. My muscles got really stiff. I couldn't see my sports therapist. I couldn't get massages done. Yes, I was teaching online, but I was teaching at home in a smaller space on a non-studio floor, which actually makes all the difference. So, and I put on weight because I think we all put on weight during lockdown anyway. But it just goes, and it actually showed to me that actually we all need to exercise. We all need to improve our lives somehow to make our lives as we age a lot easier and better.
Absolutely. And there's the World Health Organization refer to the impact of kind of like inactivity and a loss of functional capacity is actually disability affected life years. And it's estimated that a significant number of people, I mean, I can't remember the stats offhand, but it's 15 to 17%. No, I can't remember now. But a significant number of people basically spend the last 15, 20 years of their lives disabled by inactivity rather than a disability. And again, so this is something that, yes, it's the course we're talking about is about working with disabled clients, but actually it's working with anybody who has a limited functional capacity due to inactivity, because it's going to benefit everybody, and it's just so important. So what would be your key message then, firstly, to all the leisure providers out there?
I would say, look at your facility, look at it as your viewpoint as a disabled person. If not, get a disabled fitness professional or someone you know that is disabled to come in, or even get like Scope the charity in or Activity Alliance who can come in and tell you exactly what you need to make that your centre accessible to people. I know I've helped my local centres out in helping them make them more accessible, and I'm always happy to help people out because as a disabled person, I've worked with all kinds of disabilities. I know what people want basically. And then for instructors or PTs, I would say don't be scared of disability. Don't be scared of asking the questions. Don't be scared of breaking us. You cannot break us. Literally, if we break, it's not your fault. If we break, it's because it's our body trying to tell us something. But also, like we said, talk to your clients, get to know them better than any other client. Get to know how they move, what their day's like, what they want to be able to do in the future. Because that is going to help you write your programs. And also, if you teach classes, how can you make your classes more disability friendly? You know, could you have someone seated at the front, at the side, at the end of the row, so that they can do it sat down if they wanted to? It's just about putting yourself in a disabled person's viewpoint. If you woke up tomorrow morning and you had a wheelchair next to your bed, you couldn't move your legs, how are you going to get up? How are you going to have a shower? How are you going to get downstairs? How are you going to get to work? If we start thinking about mindset, because it could happen to anyone, and then it helps that person understand the viewpoint of a disabled person, because we have it 10 times, we live life 10 times harder than a non-disabled person. We don't know the struggles of getting up in the morning, getting dressed, getting in the shower, getting out of the shower, getting dressed. It takes me literally an hour and a half every morning to get out of bed, in the shower and dressed. And that's before my breakfast. And literally people can do that in like half an hour, and it takes me triple the length of time, because that's how long it takes me in my body. And if people put themselves in that viewpoint and think, then I think they slowly start to change their mindset on how to work with people.
Good, really good. What would you say then to all the disabled people out there who are nervous about approaching PTs or leisure facilities?
Do so, because actually if you don't approach them and they don't have that demand, they're not going to change. They're only going to change if you have that demand, if you keep badgering them. And, if you're not getting anywhere, go to your local MP, go to local councillors and just badger them, because the more you actually badger them in a collective, then actually you're going to get somewhere. If a leisure centre's just got demand for one disabled person, they're not going to do something. But if they've got a group of disabled people demanding change, demanding to use their services, they're more likely to then change their actual approach to disabled people.
Yeah, and actually offering them money.
Yeah.
So we'd like to give you money to come here, but
the purple,
it's so important. And
the purple pound, as it's known for disabled people, the purple pound, there's a lot of money there to be spent, and they're missing out on income.
Yeah. And, again, it's such an important area. I'm actually running a training course towards the end of June. It'll be happening again in September. And because let's face it, who knows better about this than people like Sam? Sam is actually going to come on. I'm putting you on the spot now, but Sam is going to come on and teach some of the sessions, particularly about cerebral palsy, but also about the practicalities of working with somebody with a disability, because I think it's so important on a training course to have that viewpoint, to have that input, to have that insight, which you won't get from reading a book or going on Wikipedia to find out about conditions. Sam can really explain all of this in so much detail. So instructors out there, you know where to contact me. Sam, how can people contact you if they want to find out more about what you do?
So basically I have, I'm all over social media. My business name, Inclusive Fit, so INCLUSFIT. It should play on the word inclusive, but I've also got a website, so it's www.inclusivefit.co.uk, or they can email me at sam@inclusivefit.co.uk.
Okay, I'll make sure all of those links are actually up with the podcast as well, so that people can get in touch with you, and I'll put them all over social media.
If anyone wants any advice, or they want to do the course but not sure, I'm happy to answer any questions. And I think, like Sarah said, I'm going to be on the course to help and deliver part of it. And I actually think that there's no better way to learn from a disabled person themselves, because that way you're going to get a factual, better knowledge of how to work with disabled people, basically.
But also it means that it's going to be a lot less scary for instructors, because they'll think, oh, well, Sam's all right.
Yeah.
So, I can do this. And one thing I'm known for on courses is ongoing support. So people know that they can contact me or you afterwards if they have got any questions or anything. But Sam, thank you so much for coming on today. You are inspiring generally, but also I think you're going to inspire a lot of people into working in this field, which is needed. So thank you so much for coming on, and I've no doubt that we will be chatting again in the future. So Sam James from Inclusive Fit, thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Creative Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and we will be back with you soon with more on Active Lives. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.